Well, it finally happened. No!
Welcome to Red and April Off-Grid. We are building our own home in the Arizona desert and doing all of the work ourselves. We are installing the last section of metal siding and windows, and we will be dried in. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and watch to the end to find out how much it cost.
So the first order of business here was to put up the J-trim using little 3/4 inch staples to put this in. I had some longer ones earlier and they would bend really bad, and the shorter ones work perfect and still grip. So moving on to putting on this first piece, we were kind of dreading this side. One of the reasons we were dreading is because we were using these really tall pieces. They're 11 foot tall, and so they're just unwieldy and harder to work with. And then plus, this wall has tons of windows. This is our kind of the window side of the house. This is the side with the sun exposure. And so we have all the big windows on this side to bring that sun into the house. Well, windows are a real pain when you're doing this exterior siding, this metal. You got to cut and put J-trim around each window, and then just lots of extra cuts and piecing in. And so anyway, dreading this wall, we kind of saved the worst for last, but we got lots of experience doing the other three sides, and we're ready to go for it on this side. Well, the first piece is up, and it wasn't as bad as we were expecting, actually. And since we already have the sidewall done, we decided to go ahead and put the corner piece on next. And so working that here, doing all those fine cuts to get it notched in around all the stuff up top. That one fit in pretty nicely as well. I think I might be getting the hang of it. I've done a few of these so far, but it fit pretty decently. As you can see, we have the platform set up on this end, and it's working great, way better than a ladder. Moving on now to installing the first window in this wall. So this is our bedroom window. It's a big window, and as you can see, it's an opening window. And so we're putting that in. This actually is going in really well. The sill was really level. Everything seemed to line up really good with it, and it opens really nice, just like kind of one finger action. So really pleased with that, especially considering what a big window it is. So it's 4 feet wide by 5.5 feet tall. Actually, one of the biggest windows in the house. And so just really happy that it went in so well and seems to be working good. Well, the window is in, and April is working on sealing up around the windows. She's been doing all of that, and she does an awesome job at it. It kind of frees me up to work on other things, and so I was able to put the J-trim in, cut the metal piece, and here I'm kind of putting on the silicone layer and getting ready to put that in. As you can see, this piece has a lot of cuts in it, a lot of detail. Kind of varies, but especially these pieces around the window, there's just a lot to them, and I'm really paranoid about getting a measurement wrong, doing it backwards and ruining a piece, so I'm really double checking, hoping that doesn't happen. Don't have any extra pieces here, but so far so good. So April is helping me hold this up so that when I cut through it, it doesn't bend, because there's only a little strip of metal left on this one. I had to cut out a big chunk of it to go around this window, but with her help, it went up really nice. Well, we got this piece up and connected, and I just need to put the J-trim in along the top. So fitting that in, this one went in pretty well. Nice wide window, which makes it easier. So that one went in fast, and I was pleased with that. The next order of business here is to work around this little hole in the wall, which will be the vent for our bedroom. We have 2 vents in the house, one in each bedroom, and they're kind of a high vent so that at night, especially when we have a fan bringing in air, that hot air will have somewhere to go, and we can kind of flush that hot air out. This is the hole or the vent that the air will exit through. And then on the inside, I plan to make a cover that's kind of a decorative cover that we can open and close or adjust, control the ventilation from the inside, and then maybe in the wintertime, put in a block of insulation to just keep all the warm air in. But for now, we're just fitting this in. I like the way this vent fit. This was a kind of an attic vent that worked out really well. It actually has kind of a J-trim type lip around it that fit into the metal really nice and sealed really well. Well, it's the end of the first day, and we've got on all 4 pieces on one side. Really surprised at how fast this is going on. We just expected it to be a nightmare, and it's actually going just as fast, or maybe even a little faster than the other side. A lot of that seems to be due to this scaffolding. It's working really well to have April up on top. I'll hand the piece to her, and we'll kind of both, I'll grab onto it from the bottom, she'll have it up top, and then she can guide it into that J-trim up top and around the beams and stuff. And she kind of holds it in place while I put in some screws to start it. Anyway, it's working out great, and we're really pleased so far. A minute ago, you saw April with that bender kind of bending down the termite shield to put a little lip on the bottom of that. And then over the top of the termite shield, we're putting in another L-shaped piece. This is actually a little bit of drip edge. that we're putting down that the metal will fit down over the top of. So putting that all along the bottom of this side, getting ready to put the 4 full-length pieces up on this side of the house. Everything is ready, so we're starting to work on the first piece to go up. This should be an easy piece since it just has to fit up around one beam on top. There's no windows or anything to come out of it, so looking forward to this piece. So bringing it over and getting the measurements, getting ready to do a little bit of cutting along the top, and then cut out that notch for the beam. I like to put it level along the bottom too, just to make sure we're not off there. Sometimes I have to trim a little bit. That piece went on good, and I'm moving on to the corner piece now. And I'll show you a little bit of the detail work we did. So I make a bunch of trips up and down the ladder to kind of get measurements, and I keep going back to check here, make sure I got my measurements right. Some of them I wrote down on the board, some of them I write, kind of on a piece of wood that's up there and exposed. Here I'm doing the measuring and marking. As you can see, there's quite a bit of detail in here that I need to come in and cut out. Always real, worried that I'll cut out the wrong space, cut out the negative space, or cut out the positive space and leave the negative space in. Just always have to be conscious of that. Sometimes I'll put it like a little X through the spot that I need to actually remove so that I don't remove the wrong part. I'm using the nibbler here to cut it all out. That's helping. I can do most of the work with the nibbler and then just kind of finish up and touch up with the hand snips. And doing a test fit here, seeing if it fits good. I always have to fit it up in under that J-trim, and then of course around the beams along the roof. And here's a little close-up. You can see a little bit of kind of what we're up against there. Corner piece is all in, and we're moving on to this window. This is another bedroom window, this time for the guest bedroom. And it's the same size as the window in the master, so it's the 4 foot by 5.5 foot tall, big window. And we're putting it in. The last one went in great. We have high hopes for this one, but as you can see, we're struggling with it. Messing with it. It seems a little stiffer. It's not quite level. When you compare the kind of levelness of the bottom pane against the top pane, there's one of them seems a little crooked and out. So we're checking from corner to corner and putting some shims in, making some adjustments. Finally, we got it the best we could and had to just leave it. And it works quite well, but we never could get it to work quite as good as the one in the master bedroom. Well, this window is finally in. We do put silicone around it and put a screw about every 8 inches around the perimeter of the flange. I should say the bottom, we don't put silicone around the bottom edge. We want the water to be able to drain out if somehow you do get water inside that window area. Moving on to the next 2 pieces, and so the first piece is already up, all cut in. I'm working on the next piece here and getting ready to put it in as well. This side is also going, faster than we expected. Pleased at how it's coming along. Here's a little close-up of the bedroom vent that we're putting in. It has its own built-in flanges, and so I just had to cut the right-sized hole, make some modifications. You can tell I had to cut kind of a weird angle at the bottom, and then put in silicone in the appropriate places, slide this flange up under on the top, and then kind of lay it flush where it seals against the silicone on the sides. So that brings the water over the top of the sheet metal, and then kind of keeps the water on the outside as it flows downward. Unfortunately, this one fell on a ridge on the side. I hate it when those ridges fall in the wrong place. And so there's a little notch that I had to make a little piece to cover the little bit of the rib that was sticking out. So it was a little trim piece that I had to make and fit in and then silicone in. But it actually worked out really well and looked pretty nice. All that was left to do after that is kind of button it up, go back and put in all the screws that I didn't put in originally so I could get the vent in and the J-trim above the window in. Finish putting all the screws in and then put on that Z-trim along the side. Then we're done for the day. Another great successful day, able to get all 4 pieces and that window in one day. So it's moving along really quick. The next day we decided we need to actually pour a little bit more concrete in order to prepare for the installation of the back door. This is something I hadn't originally anticipated. So this door is a flange mount door, just like the windows. It has a flange all the way around that bolts to the frame. And because the frame sticks out over the edge of the footer, because the wall is so thick with all that foam and everything in there, the footer didn't come out wide enough for the base of the door. And so I actually knew that I was going to have to bring that footer out so that there was enough for the door to sit on. That ended up working out okay. Fortunately, the porch is there. I had poured a front porch, and it's a substantial front porch. And so I felt like it was plenty strong to pour on top of. And so April's helping me out here. We went down with a layer of bonding agent, and then we just filled in this little form with about 1 or 2 bucketfuls of cement. Here I am drilling a hole to mount an outdoor spigot on the house. And the reason we're doing this now is because we need to move the bathroom water feed in order to put the next piece of sheet metal on. Don't want to have it coming out in the wrong place, and so I wanted to mount the fixture and run it a different direction. So here I've cut the line. I actually forgot to turn the water off before I cut the line. Made a little bit of a mess there, and I've rerouted the water line up to this spigot location. The water line is now ran in its permanent location inside the house, and the spigot is mounted, so all I needed to do on the outside was to attach a splitter so that we could run more than one thing off of it, and then convert the PEX into a garden hose type fitting, attach that hose from the outhouse to the outdoor spigot, and then we also had another connection that we used to put a garden hose on and water plants. While the concrete for the door was curing, we decided to go ahead and move on to the windows. Because we're ready to start doing that 2-part type of exterior siding, we needed to put in the windows first before we could even start that. The reason being is that first base layer of that corrugated metal will come up just a little bit into the window. And so in order to start that process, we need to have all the windows in. So we had 3 windows left. 2 are picture windows, pretty good sized picture windows. Same 5.5 foot height, but not quite as wide as the bedroom windows. And then the 3rd window is a slider window. Here we're putting in the second of the picture windows. These are going in really nice. I love picture windows. They're just so easy to mount. They don't take a lot of adjustment. Just kind of put them in, make sure you have some clearance all the way around, get them level, seal and screw them in. Just putting in the last few screws here. I'm actually using a cabinet screw because they have a wide flat head that doesn't stick out too much. This is the last window here. It's a tall slider window. We'd be able to open this window we could get airflow through the kitchen window and through this window if we open them up both. So that's why we wanted a slider window here. Unfortunately, this window didn't fit. I hadn't expanded the window frame quite enough. It didn't have enough clearance. And so I'm having to go back in here with the chisel and hammer and kind of give it a little more clearance. After I got that done, it went in fine. And we're getting that window kind of all siliconed up and ready to be installed. By the end of the day, we had the bathroom working again, the water all connected, and all the windows installed on this side of the house. So the windows are completely done, and the next day we're hoping to take the form off the concrete and start on the back door. Well, it's time for the concrete reveal. We're pulling off this little piece of house wrap that had sand on it to keep this concrete moist while it cured. We were a little worried about this because this concrete was kind of dry and maybe didn't have enough water in, so we kind of had to pack it in and really work it. We didn't know how it would turn out. A little bit concerned about it, and so as we pull off the forms here, we're nervous that there'd be like big pores or cavities inside. But as you can see, it's pretty smooth, and it turned out okay. Apparently we tamped it enough and worked it in enough that we filled in all the air pockets and voids, and it seems to be nice and solid. We had intentionally made it dry just for the extra strength. We wanted it to be really strong, and apparently it worked out great. Here I am doing some grindings. This surface is for the bottom of the door, and it needs to be perfectly flat, or as flat as I can get it, and level. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm grinding and getting it just as flat as I possibly can. Definitely need a dust mask there. Once the concrete was ready, there was a small gap up at the top that I needed to fur in with a little piece of wood. I actually had some wood that was just the right thickness, and so here I am cutting a couple pieces of that to fill in that extra void at the top so that we had kind of about the same gap all the way around the door. It is a flange mount, and so you want to make sure that that flange has something solid to screw into on all 3 sides. And here I am helping April put on the flashing on the sill plate. It's like a flashing tape, and then also putting around the flashing tape around the door, kind of getting it all ready and sealed up and ready to mount the door. Up next is the dry fit. We're ready to bring the door out and see if it fits in the hole. This thing is actually quite heavy, but we were able to manage it. Seems to be fitting pretty nice. I might mention here that this door actually came the right size, the size they promised, just a little bit under the nominal size of 6 foot wide. And so it actually fit in fine with me without me having to get my router and expand that opening. So that was nice. It actually fit like it should. The dry fit went well, so now we're applying this construction adhesive / sealant. that's special made for this, I guess, to that bottom sill flashing tape, which is this really heavy-duty, sticky tape stuff. So there's all kinds of layers. I guess the tape keeps the moisture from coming up through, and it just gives it a really firm base to mount the door to. Here is the door now mounted in place. I'm getting just 1 or 2 screws in along the sides just to keep it from falling out. We're putting in the actual sliding part of the door here now. It just kind of fits up under and notches in, and kind of testing it to see how good it does. It needed a little adjustment. As you can see, this little base part where there's the adjustment screw, it's actually a little cracked out there. And so I did need to adjust that some. I don't think the crack is going to hurt it any. So here we are just kind of adjusting and tweaking on this door frame a little bit. So what I did is we just set it in the base and then kind of got it in the center to where we had equal distance clearance on both sides. And then we, tested it, looked at the gap when the door was almost completely closed to see where, it had a bigger or smaller gap, and then made adjustments accordingly. We did end up having to shim one side quite a bit, kind of shift the top over a little bit to get it to align better. But with kind of one shim up in the top, we were able to go ahead and start screwing in around the flange. Love these flange type doors. They're really securely anchored. Once you get the flange all screwed in, you don't need the shims anymore, and those can be removed. You can see we have a nice even gap here all along this door seam as the door is kind of almost closed, and it seems to open and close really well. So pleased with how this turned out. We decided to go ahead and add the spray foam at this point just because when it dries it gives it extra support. And so April is going along here putting a special foam that's made for doors and windows in. So that'll get it, once that dries, it'll get nice and solid and this door will really be locked in there. Once the back door was installed, we were ready to get back to the sheet metal work. So we planned to do this kind of a mirror image of the other side and put in the different types of metal here. So we're going to put the corrugated tin along the bottom, and it's going to come up just above the bottom of the window. And then there'll be that Z-trim transition, and then we'll go with the charcoal colored for the rest of the way up.
So I'm trying to prevent water from potentially running behind the drip edge down to the termite shield and possibly in under the walls. So here is the tape layering I eventually decided I liked the best, because some types of tape stick better to some surfaces than others. So here you can see the different layers of tape and red attaching the J-trim to the side of the door. I really struggled figuring out exactly how I wanted to tape things, so hopefully this works.
I've got quite a bit of that corrugated along the bottom done, and now I'm ready to move up to the charcoal along the top here. I'm kind of having to work around the bathhouse or the bathroom, and so right now I'm sitting on top of it. It's a little challenging to work around this house sometimes. It's a tight space in there, and so you just end up working kind of squeezed in between it and the house or on top of that thing. Been nice to have, but it'll sure be nice when we get to the point in the project where we can remove it. Anyway, we're mounting a piece by the window. It's kind of all windows from here on out, so pretty much every piece is going to have a window cut in it. So a lot of detail work here. As you can see, I handed it up to April. She's up there sitting on the bathroom. So I handed it up to her and she fits it in. It's actually going really well. It actually works good to have her up there doing that for me and kind of working together as a team here, and it's going along pretty nicely.
So since these beams are sloping downward towards the house, I've been trying to think of anywhere water could possibly get in around the beams. I decided to run a piece of tape along the crack in the top of the beam to make sure water can't run down the beam and get inside.
Got this piece on and I'm ready to put the J-trim in along the top. Always nice to get this part of it done and finish up a window. Like I said, I'm getting a little better at doing this. These windows aren't quite as wide as some, but this one actually went in okay as well. Kind of perfecting the art here. They don't always turn out perfect, but they turn out good enough for me, and that's enough, I guess. So this one went in pretty nice. And kind of buttoning it up and putting in those extra screws to finish attaching the panel. Well, the next sheet was another window cut, of course. We're going into that second living room window, and sure enough, it finally happened. I was afraid it would. I cut it the wrong way. I cut it like the mirror image wrong. And I knew before I even handed it up to April that it was wrong, and I was like, no! Because I've been dreading this. I've been trying so hard to avoid it. But thankfully, I do have one extra piece of this charcoal. It's the only color that we have an extra piece of, and actually I don't remember ordering an extra piece. I don't know if they sent us an extra piece or if I just ordered too much, but we had one extra piece. So we're finally down to the last window, and so part of this process is putting on the J-trim around the window, and what I realized here is that I didn't have quite enough J-trim. I ordered like 360 feet of this stuff for the house, so it was just an estimation, and it ends up I'm like 6 feet short. And so I was totally bummed. I looked all over town trying to find anybody that had it. Nobody had it. And so the only solution I could find was to just use some of these scrap pieces that I had left over, and I had very little left over, but basically I was able to get a whole bunch of scrap pieces. It's kind of bad. About 4 scrap pieces, I guess, and piece those in to finish up the J-trim on one side of the window. It should actually work okay, lapping in the correct direction so that the water flow will work properly, so it shouldn't be an issue that way. And actually, once we got it all up there, it isn't that noticeable. So it worked out okay, but man, it would have been nice to have just a little bit more. I ended up being just a few feet short. Well, we're almost done with the sheeting on the last side of the house. Very exciting, and we promised a cost breakdown of all the metal, so here it is. So I'll start with the cost of the roof. Remember, we used that white R panel on the roof, 26 gauge, and so the cost that I'm about to give you includes everything, including the gutter, the side trim, the front trim, the screws, so everything for the entire roof. So the total price was $2,500. Now remember, this is a 1,200 square foot house, and so the area of the roof is even bigger with all the overhang and everything. We thought that was a really good price for this size of roof. That white panel was actually quite inexpensive. It was $3.33 a linear foot, which is a good price, maybe because it was white, but really thought that was a good value for what we were getting. The siding on the house ended up costing $3,800, and that's for everything again. That's the side trim, that's the screws, that's the 3 different types of metal, and so the total cost $3,800. The metal siding we used for the sides was more expensive. It's a little bit less common, I guess, a profile in metal. Also, the colors are a little bit more expensive, and when we were choosing our colors, we weren't concerned about the price. We were just going with what we wanted, and so ended up being a little bit more per foot. It was over $4, and I think some of it was even above $5 per linear foot. But anyway, still not a bad price. Came out to $3,800. And then we paid $300 for shipping from El Paso, which wasn't bad at all. So the total price for all the metal for the entire exterior of the house was $6,600, less than the cost of one used shipping container. And with the last bit of sheeting installed on the south side, all that was left to do was install a temporary front door. Just wanted to do a temporary. I hope to make a custom front door later and do a little bit of woodworking there. But for now, we put a temporary back door on the house, and so the place will be completely sealed in. Very excited about this. Don't have to worry about animals, critters, snakes getting in. Don't have to worry about rain getting in. This is a huge milestone for the project, and man, it really is exciting to get this done.
We'll be switching gears for the next video, so be sure to subscribe and join us again next time. Thanks for watching.